What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk a little bit about engineering and also about speakers, um, especially this wonderful glass fiber coned marine grade speaker from GaleForce Audio. So whenever you're engineering something, no matter what it is, there's always a set of hurdles you have to jump. There's always compromises. So in order to make a bridge strong, you have to make it heavy. To make it light, you don't get to make it as strong. So forth and so on. And in engineering anything, that is the case. So to make a speaker like this do its job properly, you've got some conflicting things that you have to design into it. Number one is you have to make the cone rigid. It has to be able to accurately move up and down. See how this does? Without deforming. That's pretty cool, right? Even pressing over here, it doesn't cause this to deform. It moves just as much on the other side. It's very linear and very stiff. You also have to make it very light. It needs to be able to move as least mass as possible back and forth so that it can accurately reproduce the notes it's trying to play. Now, when it comes to designing a speaker, those are the two main things you have to focus on: light and stiff. But when you add a third element, like in this driver, where it has to do both of these things, but it also has to be waterproof. Can't use paper anymore. Paper works really good. This is actually a cotton impregnated paper. And these audio dynamic drivers are really, really good. But what they can't do is handle water. So the guys at GaleForce had to meet these requirements, but they also had to make it waterproof. Man, what a task they took on. Because now you got to make this cone out of a completely different material. You got to figure out a way to keep water from getting down in there. You got to make the tweeter out of something that can handle splashes of water on it. There's so many things. And then you got to make it sound good too. It's still got to sound good. So this glass impregnated or glass fiber cone they used exhibits the rigid characteristic. As you can see, when you press down on one side, it doesn't just press down over here, it moves on that side just as much. It's nice and strong. It doesn't deform when it's moving. It's also linear. It's moving up and down nice and straight. At the same time, it's still very light. You know what they give up in that? Cost. That cone cost more money. So whenever you do the trifecta, there's always a trifecta: light, stiff, and cheap. You can't have all three of those. You got to pick two, and then the other one you sacrifice. Okay? In this case, light and stiff, got that covered. Cheap, not so much. These cones cost a lot to have installed in these speakers. You've also got this rubber accordion gasket down here that connects to the center piece right here. That makes a seal. And at the same time, this has to be able to do what a speaker does, right? It's got to be able to move like a speaker, but still be a good, solid, waterproof seal. Not just waterproof, but salt waterproof. These are designed for use in the ocean, on jet skis, in boats, on motorcycles, on the highway, in the rain. You've added so many more things to this. So you've still got the cost. You got to keep the cost in something that people can afford to pay and are willing to pay. Okay? But at the same time, you got to make this wonderful, good sounding driver that is waterproof, that will handle these elements. All these design elements are very expensive to implement. Even if you've got a company set up that's willing to manufacture them for you, and they have most of everything they need to make that happen, right? You've still got to pay them to manufacture the product, and you've got to pay for a lot more exotic materials, and you've got to retool and create tools to do things like this. This is a whole different cone, a whole different centerpiece behind this, what would be the dust cap. It's a whole different thing there. You got a nice rubber surround. You got binding post on here, the spring-loaded binding post. Very solidly made. Everything is. Steel basket, because aluminum is corroded really bad in salt water, or even just around somewhere that has salt water in the air. Anybody that lives out on the coast, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Anything made out of aluminum turns white and dusty so fast. Yeah, don't use copper-clad aluminum, but especially don't use copper-clad aluminum wire if you live near the ocean. It's not good. Anyway, the different materials involved and in the tooling to make these special pieces are all expensive. So the fact that they've got this driver on sale for the same price as this driver, which I would consider this to be on the same level as a mid-tier Focal or Morel or any of the high-end brands. This is a mid-tier competitor for those. In some ways, it sounds better. And the prices are the same for these two drivers. And so they're competing in a very difficult market where, number one, you've got to make something sound good. Number two, it's got to be waterproof. And number three, it's got to be able to be loud and efficient, because jet skis and motorcycles don't have big, huge banks of batteries to power big, huge amplifiers. They need to be able to get a lot of volume out of a little bit of power. And it also has to be waterproof. And it's got to sound good. Wow. What an engineering challenge. Yes, this driver visually resembles other drivers out there that do a similar job. But I guarantee you, those drivers don't sound as good as this does. And they're not waterproof. So the differences are night and day. Night and day. Is this a good value for the money you're paying for it? Absolutely. You're getting a product that sounds absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm really impressed by how good it sounds. And the cone area is somewhat sacrificed because of this accordion in here. Actually takes up some of that cone area. If you look at the cone area on this audio dynamic speaker, the cone actually goes down and behind this tweeter quite a bit to an eventual little foam plug in here, right? But there's quite a bit of cone area right there. And they also use a fairly small surround up here. Whereas this guy uses a bigger surround, it has shorter distance to travel before it picks up on this thing. So there's some challenges in making this work as well as it does. And overall, the construction on these is great. Guys, I really do think they're a good speaker. I'm really impressed with them. Now, I will tell you, when you get these, so far, I read up on them before. I read some complaints. People complained about these capacitors not being attached to the basket. And the two that I pulled out and checked, both, that is the case. However, even though it's not attached by the adhesive that's here, isn't holding it on, it is a very stiff wiring that runs over to it, so it's not going anywhere. And just letting it hang is not going to cause any problems. But if you do feel the need, you can always put a little bit of hot glue in there to re-stick it. I'm sure that's just a design problem that they ran into and probably did not catch it. And it's probably going to be like that on all of them, at least for that entire batch. But the adhesive that holds these capacitors still not there. However, like I said, it's not going anywhere. I mean, you know, it's attached, so it's not going anywhere. And this is not like someplace you're going to mount the speaker by the capacitor. So It's just kind of chilling back there. Another interesting thing you can do with this is, if you notice these leads coming out, so your tweeter leads are coming out right here and go this way and connect to your binding post. This one, the positive lead, goes through the capacitor and then connects to the binding post. There is nothing saying that you could not separate these leads from this binding post and bi-amp this driver. So you could run a separate channel on the tweeter and a separate channel on the mid-range. Completely doable. There's another thing that I noticed, and I don't think it'll ever be a thing, but if it is, this type of setup has a screw of some type in here that you can tap to and you can remove, and you should be able to remove this driver from the center. If they ever decide to sell a pole piece, you know, like a cone, a phase plug to screw into that, you could, you know, separate these and make a mid tweeter combo. Just something in the future, maybe, I don't know. But some of this has some modular pieces. Like I said, this device right here. If we look at the audio dynamic driver, completely different driver, it also has the same thing going on right there. Okay, there's a screw in there, wire comes out, and that screw attaches this to the magnet so that your tweeter can be mounted. And you can pull this out, you can bi-amp this, and you can get a face plug to fit in there if they make one. A whole lot of companies have drivers very similarly made in that regard. It's not how it's put together, it's what pieces are put in that puzzle. The difference between these two is night and day. Although they both are 6.5s, they both are coaxials, they both sound great. I think this one sounds better. I like the sound. That doesn't mean that it necessarily does sound better. It just means that I prefer the sound better. I like a little bit brighter tweeter. This is a little brighter. Actually, it's not really. These are just really subdued. They have a very soft tweeter, a very low key tweeter. This is more middle of the road tweeter. So it's going to get out there. Anyway, I wanted to cover a few of those things and talk about some of those points because, you know, they're relevant. Looks like this guy has a bigger voice coil. Has a much more, there's much more of a spider in here too. Much more movement in that spider. Kind of makes me wonder, yeah, this thing has quite a bit of throw. Look at that. There's quite a bit of throw to this. So it's a 100 watt RMS, but boy, it's got a lot of throw. And it says it plays 50 hertz up to 15K if I'm not mistaken. That's how your grill fits on there. Man, ain't that a good looking driver? I mean, that thing is just sexy. Look at that. It's just a really good looking driver. It's going to take the second coming of Christ to get me to pull these things out of my Tahoe once I get them in there. Because I already know how good they sound. Boy, they're going to rock out in that Tahoe. They are going to rock balls. Anyway, guys, if you want to pick up some of these awesome drivers, head over to BigJeffAudio and use the coupon code CAE to get a discount. And send them a note. Tell them that you come over here from Car Audio Enthusiast. And that CAE is the man. And I'm really good at filling cracks.